Canon recently released a teaser video of an unknown 8K cinema camera along with some 8K video footage from this camera. My understanding from this video, as well as other marketing material from Canon, is that Canon's strategy is to position itself as the leader in the 8K video space by providing full solutions for 8K video in broadcasting, cinema, mirrorless cameras, lenses, displays, projectors, and any relevant equipment such as conversion boxes. So I try to find out more details about the spec of this camera, but before I go into the spec details, I want to go through the history of this camera. The prototype for this camera was first shown at the Paris 2015 Canon Expo.
External box, the function is to deveyer real time in 8K and also down converting into the 4K, and as well output to the external 4K recorder.
So you've not got one, but you've got four convergent design Odyssey 7Q recorders here. So
yeah, we have 4 connections to connect with this external box.
The same camera was also shown at Photonica 2016.
So this is just a prototype based on a C300 Mark II body, outputting 6 GSGI raw signals through into where we have a new Canon converter box here. There is a stake in the ground at the moment from NHK, who has said that they plan to deliver 8K broadcast signal at the 2020 Olympics.
In late October 2020, there were some rumors about an 8K camera being in beta with some details about its spec. And in late December 2020, Canon releases their teaser video for this new camera. The camera body is almost identical to the camera body of the C300 Mark II. It has some slight modifications, with the main difference, or main visible difference, being the 4 output connections for the 8K video. The camera has a super 35mm CMOS sensor with a pixel pitch of 3.2 micrometers. The camera can output 4 4K raw videos at 60 frames per second to a Canon 8K conversion box, which can then either combine the 4 video streams into a single 8K raw video or send each of the 4K raw streams to another destination, for example 4 separate recorders. The total 8K raw video is 21.2 gigabits per second, which is 4 times what the original C500 raw output was. It uses the DIGIC 10 or DIGIC X processor, depending on how you pronounce it, which is the same processor being used in the 1DX Mark III, the R5 and the R6. The camera's card slots are identical to the C300 Mark II. So it has dual CFast card slots at the back and a single SD card slot in the front of the camera. The camera seems to be targeted more towards broadcasters, considering the additional setup requirements for it to actually use 8K. Essentially what Canon is doing is they're selling their 8K ecosystem as opposed to only selling a camera. So it would make sense for the camera itself not to be too expensive. And I believe Canon was intending to release the camera, or make the announcement anyway, at the News and Broadcast trade show in April 2021 ahead of the Olympics. The News and Broadcast trade show has been, I think, set back to October, if I remember correctly. And while we're on the topic of Olympics, it's worth mentioning that NHK, which is a broadcaster in Japan, is planning to broadcast the Japan 2020 Olympics in 8K. And that seems to have some influence on what Canon does with their 8K ecosystem. When it comes to the pricing, I expect this camera to be more expensive than the C70, the 1DX Mark III, as well as the C300 Mark II. But I believe it will be cheaper than the C300 Mark III because despite the 8K option, it has quite a few shortcomings. To use the 8K effectively, a number of peripheral devices need to be purchased, such as the 8K conversion box and the external 8K recorders or multiple 4K recorders. This means that you have to buy into the Canon 8K ecosystem, which will have a higher overall cost in comparison to the C300 Mark III. So you would be paying more to be able to record 8K videos, even though the camera itself might be cheaper. Also, to benefit from 8K video recording capability, a high resolving lens is required, so that might increase the cost further because you might not be able to get the same level of quality if you're using lower quality lenses that you already own and use on other cameras. And typically those cameras would have bigger photo sites or a higher pixel pitch. And this brings me to my next point. This camera has smaller photo sites and a lower pixel pitch than the C300 Mark III. So it might have worse low light performance in comparison to the C300 Mark III. The camera body is the same as or pretty much the same as the C300 Mark II, which has some flaws, and those flaws have been identified and rectified in the next version of the C300, which is the Mark III. But since they still exist on this camera can't be considered a high-end camera. This camera uses CFast card slots instead of CFexpress, which means its internal recording capabilities will be somewhat constrained in comparison to the C300 Mark III, but will probably match the C300 Mark II since they both have the same card slots. So these limitations in comparison to the C300 Mark III leads me to believe that this camera will be cheaper than the C300 Mark III despite the 8K capability. Looking at the timeline of the Canon and Cinema lineup, there are only two cameras that have gone a long time without an upgrade, the C700 and the C200. So these two cameras are good candidates for upcoming releases, unless a new line of cinema cameras is launched with this unbranded camera. This camera will obviously not be in the C700 lineup, but unless Canon releases a new cinema line, it could fit into the C200 line as the C200 Mark II. Canon intended to announce the C200 Mark II in April 2021 to coincide with their News and Broadcast trade show, which signals that the C200 Mark II is somewhat targeted at broadcasters. This seems to correlate with this camera being targeted for the Olympic Games. The rumor that the C200 Mark II has a less modular body than the C300 Mark III also makes me think that the C200 Mark II body could be similar to the C300 Mark II, which is the body that is shown in the teaser video for this 8K camera. Comparing the C200 to the C300 Mark II seems to correlate with the comparison of this camera to the C300 Mark III. In both comparisons, it appears that the C300 line of cameras has a slower processor but faster internal storage card slots. This means that even though this camera has the processing power to capture and encode high bitrate videos, it won't be able to store them internally. The one area which this camera differs from both the C200 and the C300 line of cameras is in its sensors, photo site size, and the pixel pitch. So that might mean that the 8K video footage can only be obtained by an external recorder combining the 4 raw output streams. So the camera itself might not actually have 8K recording internally. Or if it does, it would be probably with lower chroma sampling rates. So unless Canon decides to start a new line of cinema cameras, I think this camera could be branded as the C200 Mark II. Anyway, I could be wrong about all of this, so don't take anything that I say too seriously.